I'd like to invite the first set of speakers. We have an extensive agenda. We have a chair, Giulietto Chiesa. Giulietto Chiesa is a journalist with a global name, member of the parliament during many years, a friend of our countries. Giulietto, you choose the chair. Where is Giulietto Chiesa? He was very close to us. Now he has gone somewhere. Anyway, we will announce him once more and hope he didn't get lost. I'm sure he arrived here. David Lane, please come to us. You are welcome to make yourself comfortable. He is the star of post-Keynesianism, and he is the head of the Global Sociological Association, a professor of Cambridge. And it's a real pleasure to be. Please choose any place you like. You have the right to choose the best chair. Anatoly Porokhovsky, Professor Porokhovsky, Doctor of Economics, Chair of the Board of the Moscow State University. He is in charge of the board, which is celebrating 200th anniversary. It's one of the oldest in the world, and the dialogue between Cambridge and Moscow University will continue. Oleg Smolin will join us a little later. Mr. Ryazanov, professor and the head of the chair of economic faculty. He represents the second largest university of our country, and this dialogue of two capitals of Moscow and the northern capital is not just by chance. Giulietto, let's welcome Giulietto Chiesa. This is your place, Mr. Ryazanov. We are very happy. Montu, Saxena, are you here? Yes, you are welcome. Choose your chair. On the left side from moderator, we'll have the representatives of Great Britain. Montu is the coordinator and the head of the Center of Cambridge Research Center. He's a man, he's the doctor of physics and anthropology, and he's also a specialist in geopolitology, and also we have our neighbor here is also with excellent physical education. And Montu Saxena and Peter Schulze, Federal Republic of Germany. Peter worked for a long time. He was Ebert's fund head, and he's one of the most famous scientists of Germany who is involved in the study of the material production. Please, the floor is yours. So one more guest from Great Britain. Let me see where he is among us. Yes, Bernadette Mell, the deputy of the Regional Parliament of London, and we will have a colloquium of academicians. And besides, she's a very beautiful lady, and I'm sure she will excuse me. And Mr. Smolin and Mr. Sorokin is the professor of the Moscow State University who is involved in the academician activity. I hope I haven't missed anything. Would you please join this chair neighboring our lady? Could you wait for us in the hall? I failed to choose the right number of chairs, and I've been involved only 2 years in the mathematical analysis, so I can't count properly up to the number of 10. I'm very happy to see you all, and I'm sure you have the headsets for simultaneous translation. And Sergei Dmitrovich, the floor is yours. Esteemed friends, once again, I'd like to welcome you here at this conference and represent here St. Petersburg Economic Congress, and I'd like to welcome those participants who moved here from St. Petersburg and our colleagues. And I'm very thankful to them who have found time to attend this conference and our St. Petersburg Congress. And this conference, they have lots in common in terms of the agenda and topics discussed, and I'd like to once again dwell on this topic. And what I'm going to tell you is explained in details in the book which we handed over to the participants, and there were even proposals to increase the publication. And I would briefly explain what's going on there. What's important was there and what we would like to discuss today. Anybody is going to question that our economy needs a reboot, and that was discussed yesterday, that we need to reboot our economy on the paradigm of industrial method of production for the future leaders of the coming epoch. These are basically technological leaders, and the turn is about to start. However, it's not exactly and properly understood. For there is no proper theoretical ground for this and long-term strategy, economic strategy, and the program for practical execution. And today, our country, in a number of assessments, let's say of Higher School of Economics and other institutions as a whole, we are lagging behind the technological threshold of advanced industrial technology, perhaps by 15 or 30 years. So it is important that the second generation effort takes place faster than in the rest of the world if we want to hold leading positions in the world. We need to attain new quality of technology and the quality of industry. This is to meet an ever-growing demand of the mankind, and it is not possible to solve this problem without new industrial way of production. This is the method which is invented by the humanity. And Marx wrote about the transition, about the jump to the freedom of necessity to the kingdom of freedom. And in order to satisfy any requirements and demands and the development as a creator, a material basis is very crucial. So that's why Karl Marx was right, saying that the kingdom of freedom could be prosperous only on the basis of kingdom of necessity. And we could come closer by exposing the talents and knowledge of a human being on the basis of the industrial principles of highly technological manufacturing process. And real demands of the human being are very important, and expansion of the sphere of technological use of this knowledge and the volume defines the speed of movement to the new kinds and types of production. It's not just because of some kind of swelling of bulging of certain knowledge, but new products on the basis of science-based knowledge in order to invent and design new materials which will be energy efficient, heat resistance, with absolutely new properties. And that will entail absolutely new level of knowledge in every product. And now the humanity is on the threshold of a new technological revolution, which will in turn lead to new changes and in the production of new knowledge and in the total socio-economic foundation of the society. It would be a new condition and a new foundation of the society. And we termed it a new industrial society .2 for traditionally a new generation is expressed in such manner. So it's Neo 2. Colleagues, what is about to happen will definitely take time. In order to obtain such parameters of the society, of the socio-economic system, which would make it possible to pass over to Neo 2 stage, a lot has to be done in economy, in socio-economic sphere, in the change of our existing institutions, and what to do and how to do is very important to discuss today. And I call upon everybody to a fruitful and sincere work to expose your ideas. I call upon you to join in the discussion. Perhaps there might be certain differences with my colleagues, but it doesn't mean that we cannot find something in common. So I call upon everybody to join and work fruitfully. With this, we commence our conference with such a topic, a new quality of material production. What is the relationship between other spheres and what economic mechanisms are required to make it happen if this is a goal? And Sergei Dmitrievich mentioned certain things, and for me is the development of the qualities of the human being, culture, and science. Where is the hen and where is the egg? We will continue this discussion. We will definitely dwell also on the international context, and that's why I'm very happy that the first speaker would be Giulietto Chiesa, whom I introduced, who was approaching our podium, our stage. And Giulietto was a member of the European Parliament and a member of several commissions concerning issues of Asia and Europe.
Сейчас реально является одним из ключевых модераторов ряда международных сетей, которые ведут очень большую работу по донесению правды до людей о том, что происходит в России, что происходит на Украине, что происходит в мире. На Западе тоже умеют лгать, и это, к сожалению, не только
Western mass media lie
любой страны мира.
in Russia. Sometimes they also speak truth. Well, this is situation. Giulietto Chiesa, you have the floor.
Спасибо за приглашение.
For the invitation to St. Petersburg and here, I'm very happy. Unfortunately, I will be against the current, speaking against the current. Have you ever been with the current? You have always been against the current, and it's very good. But in this case, I would like to share with you some of my thoughts. I've listened to presentations made yesterday, and I share many of the ideas which were, say, presented yesterday and today as well. But I do have a question, actually. All this discussion is taking place as though the problem is only specifically Russian problems. But I believe that there is a fundamental error here. It's not a Russia-specific issue. This is a world issue. And whatever is taking place in your country should be correlated with the situation taking shape elsewhere. Many speakers spoke as though Russia was supposed to join the mainstream of the so-called market economy. But I would want to ask a question. Are we sure that this market economy is for a long time? Will it stay for a long time? Will it survive? I am not quite sure about that. I am not an economist, but I do read many, say, forecasts and which are contradictory and which contradict this point of view, by the way. Recently, I read a very brief but very substantive article written by Larry Summers, one of the key political and economic advisors of the American administration, Clinton administration, and he says things which are new. In 2020, he says, the world will be most probably in the condition of the growth at the zero level. In 5 years, Legger Summers forecasts that the growth rate of the world GDP will be about zero. Capitalism cannot tolerate such situations when the growth rate is zero. Capitalism dies, he says. This is something which Sanders says. And secondly, all forecasts which I have read so far of the IMF made in 2012, 3 years ago, turned out to be erroneous. Not simply erroneous, but grossly erroneous. So the IMF this year says that all forecasts did not come true and do not correlate with the present reality. What is happening? Where are we? What is taking place? This is a very important thing to ponder upon. Third thing, another phenomenal event. In the course of 10 years, we have seen that large capitals would go from developed nations to the emerging markets. But then, in the 2015, the process somehow was reversed. More than $1 trillion were returned from the developing nations to developed nations within 1 year only. So there was a 180 degrees turn, considering the fact that for 20 years the direction of the movement was opposite. What is taking place? Fourthly, we see that all Western media says that West is developing. Is it true? Is it really true? I cannot testify to that. I do not see development. Europe is idling, as a matter of fact. The United States, they say that they are growing, but recent development of the Wall Street turned out to be a lie. 85% of the development of the Western United States were not paid for. So that was a trick. It was a gross lie and mischief, which we adopted as a great accomplishment of the market economy, that there was no accomplishment. They created a bubble of the debt, which is currently has been transferred to Europe, and Europe finds itself in a situation when all middle levels of the population, all European nations, are likely to lose their status and level of their income. So they will experience a very dramatic decline of the incomes of the middle class. So the political equilibrium is in great danger. Whatever you see today, yesterday, is a testimony to this statement. So that's why what has been said that Russia should make an effort, but you should always take into account the overall picture. So whatever you say cannot be implemented in separation from the world market, because you are connected to the world market with the umbilical cord. You are not isolated, and I do believe that it is a gross global crisis of the Western economy that is taking place now, including the situation with the dollar. And here we have an issue, a really big issue. Russia is dependent on dollars until now. And it's one of the challenges which Chinese are looking at with great attention. You know that only a week ago, the IMF agreed to include the Chinese currency into the package. This is also indicates of the gigantic phenomena. This is the testimony of the fact that the West cannot afford not to take into account such a giant country as China. So there is an issue, financial, monetary issue. I'm coming down to a close because I've been speaking for a long time. I will add only one subject matter which is very close to my heart. This morning I was listening to a presentation of your Nobel Prize winner, Mr. Alferov, and he says very important things. We should review something, our perception. Until this moment, Russia has been a somewhat colonized country in the Western perception. The Western perception, the Western thinking is making a gross mistake. They think that development will be an endless process. I'm not saying as an economist, I'm speaking as a physicist. There is a principle in physics and the politics as well, which says that in a closed system of resources, an endless development is not possible. This is a physical principle. And so far, we have lived all together within 3 centuries under the illusion that development will go on forever. Is it true? I do not think it is true. This is a mistake. I think that the time has come to think about strategic decisions. We can only think of development when we know for sure that we have more about 30 years for mass use of energy resources, non-resumable resources. And then what will happen then? What direction this so-called development will take place if we do not take into account strategy? Because right now, any decision should be strategic ones. So the time has come now that when we have to address specific issues of development. No strategy, not taking into account limitation of resources and means of development, not only energy resources, will be an erroneous one. I believe that Russia right now has gigantic international role, not because it has a mission, but Russia is the only country capable to restrain, say, claims of the West. And it's very important for Russia to adopt a strategically correct decision, not only for tomorrow, not only for the day after tomorrow, but for the 10, 20 years ahead of us. Thank you very much indeed. Great. It's a very serious challenge that you have formulated, dear friends. The issues of the limits of the growth has been discussed for a long time, but there are counter trends when we speak about smart production, in particular speak about smartphones. which create wealth more than supercomputers, which initially consumed the. In this particular case, there are issues, of course, but to stop endless consumerism, society which does not provide for psychological, cultural, and educational progress by finding an alternative, including other areas, is something which our country should do. This is very good to say. And now I will act as a evil, say, monitor, saying that each speaker has 8 minutes. You can say anything you think within this time limit. 8 minutes. Please speak on the issue of the David Lane from Cambridge. I don't think I should add anything else. And now I believe we'll have a presentation to be made by Professor Lane. Okay, now we see the presentation. Very good. You have the floor, and you have the counter. You have 7 minutes and 43 seconds. Go ahead. Thank you for the invitation and for the welcoming words. It's always a pleasure to visit the Moscow Economic Forum and to listen to critical, say, presentation made by Russia, an article by Alexander Buzgalin and Andrei Kolganova, published in the Cambridge Journal of Economics. It's a total surprise for me because he's going to speak about this article. If I had known, I would have prevented it, of course. Is what of the school of the Marxist political economy over the last 20 years. It is necessary to say that this is a review which cannot include all the subject matters developed by this school, but the article has an advantage in that it made an emphasis on the key issues. I would like to focus on 2 subject matters: critics of this market model of the economy and understanding of those forces which move the modern society to the post-market society. I would compare those conclusions with the Western theoreticians which adhere to the position of similar critical political economy school. That's why everything which is good in my presentation stems from Buzgalin and Kolganov, and all bad stems from Western theoreticians. My conclusion: it is necessary to step up the criticism of neoliberalism to create a holistic alternative paradigm. Now I will speak in English.
In this paper, I wish to outline just 3 topics which are raised by the critical political economy school and developed by other thinkers. First, the features of modern societies they have identified as new economic forms which are superseding current economic institutions. Second, what kind of state formation is necessary to conduct this transformation? And third, how far have they identified factors which challenge conventional thinking to make a new paradigm? Buzgalin and Kolganov emphasized the role of socially responsible business and socially based enterprises which function on a not-for-profit basis. Business regulation and the role of the state as provider of goods and services in the social and cultural fields also provide non-market-based activities. These transitional forms of post-industrial economy and post-capitalist relations constitute the future, in their view, and have to be given a central role in the theory of capitalism. Buzgalin and Kolganov present an integral model of the economic functions of the functions of the state. And here I quote, "The socio-economic activity of the state is one of the most important forms of transition. Such transitional forms include the embryos of post-market relations, and in particular of a conscious, directly social means for the coordination, regulation of the proportions and the distribution, allocation of resources." While many recognize the important role the state has played, for example, in the provision of welfare, many question whether this is a realistic way to view contemporary developments in a globalizing world. And the main argument put forward is the state is not an autonomous, non-capitalist unit. The dynamics of capitalism, in my view, are moving in other directions. And unless these can be reversed or superseded, the result may be a more vibrant, globalized form of capitalism. So what is needed is a shift from a market-centered state to a state-centered market. The neoliberals endorse state expenditure in the role of enforcement. Their opposition is to the state as a coordinating body, as an alternative to the market. Hence, the state could be a new economic force, but in current conditions, it is not moving in this direction. What have to be put at the center of current analysis is the power of the transnational corporations and the compact between the political, media, economic, and transnational classes. The political unity of elites significantly curtails the rise of alternative, non-market forms of economy. So it is not just global communication and information, global and alternative forms of economy. It's not just the global communication and information technology or market and class webs stressed by network people like Castells, but the rise of a global capitalist class which gives global capitalism its peculiar feature. Of great importance is the acceptance of neoliberal values and the mobility of labor, capital, services, and goods. Such mobility has a qualitative and quantitative effect to strengthen the market-centered economies. And these are not just marginal developments, but provide the dynamic to a move to a world economy and the decay of the nation-state. Even social democratic forms of economic intervention suggested by Keynes are no longer possible if states lack control over the flow of labor and capital. What then of the alternative? Two major tasks must be addressed to achieve an intellectual breakthrough. First is a robust demonstration that the underlying principles of the architecture of neoliberal economies are false. We have to take neoliberalism seriously. Neoliberalism is not just an economic theory based on market centrism and financialization, but, like Marxism, a total paradigm of society. Hence, focusing on market centrism is an important but only one dimension of neoliberalism.
Unfortunately, your time is finished.
Oh.
So It's very interesting for me to listen to your presentation, but 2 minutes, please, okay?
1 minute?
Yes.
Yeah, well, this is here what I put on this diagram here to show the different dimensions of neoliberalism. At the heart of neoliberalism are the values which people have, individual rationality, people believing that the system gives them what they deserve. And this then is transmitted into the different sectors, the social sector, private ownership, civil society on the very top, the economy with profit maximization, markets, and so on, and the political, the minimalist enforcement states, and to the left there, the legitimation in terms of democratic competitive elections. So the future alternative, I think, paradigm should be one of hybridization of state and market. And a methodology is not to search for embryos developing under capitalism, but to look for real alternatives. And as I pointed out in other presentations at the MEF, there are two such models. And both these models involve state-regulated economy. And these are state-regulated models. Coordinated corporatist capitalism, in which the state coordinates the factors of production, and in this case, the free movement of capital, labor, goods, and services is abandoned in favor of state regulation of privately owned businesses. And in this way, I think this way Russia is going under Putin. A second variant is that of market socialism, in which the market continues, but as a secondary mechanism to planning, which is enabled by state control of investment. The socialist element is the deprivatization of large multinational companies, and the first step would be the direction to nationalize the financial and energy sectors. Это всё.
Спасибо огромное.
Thank you very much, esteemed colleagues. I never expected that Professor Lane will offer such a critical gift. And I had some pricks of conscience, and I was criticized. And however, this is a very important issue. What could be an alternative to neoliberal strategy? And I don't want to use the rights of moderator and would like to make an announcement. First of all, we have Oleg Nikolaevich Smolin, the deputy of the State Parliament, the first deputy of the chairman of the Committee on Education. And second announcement, Professor Bodrunov, who is the chairman of the Moscow Committee of the Moscow Economic Forum, has to solve some organizational missions. So, Sergei Dmitrovich, thank you for attending. And we understand, and we will be happy to welcome you at the last plenary session in which Mr. Chiesa will also have the floor. And I'm sure that we'll have a dialogue of Russian-speaking and English-speaking scientists. Anatoly Porokhovsky, head of the Board of Political Economy of the State University, and we will expose this presentation on the screen. Let's wait for a while, and I'd like to remind you that our conference continues the whole series of analysis of resurrection of industry, and Mr. Porokhovsky, together with Professor Kubib, will moderate a large conference with the development of industry, and this is the announcement of tomorrow's event. And let me help you, and esteemed participants of the conference, of course. This is a great honor to join you in the work with the Moscow Economic Forum, which is held for the fourth time. And following the Cambridge tradition, I'd like also to offer you three questions which I would like to announce and discuss further on, and I propose to discuss the issue from formal to real assessment of state resources, whom they are serving, and a jump into the new formation. So what is from formal to real assessment? Mr. Chiesa said how to evaluate the modern global development, and from the viewpoint of formal assessment says that the structure of Russian and American economy from the viewpoint of production of commodities and services are almost the same. The structure of Russian and American economy is almost the same, but we know what is behind these formal assessments. And it appears to me that some modern directions, theoretical directions, are very formal, and you have to pay attention not to the formal things, but to real content. At the same time, freedom of choice and real constraints. We say that everyone has lots of freedom, and we can do whatever we want to do, but in reality, especially in economy, as we saw at previous sessions, this freedom is seriously restricted. And the last one is the openness of the economy. What is required? Who is the winner if the Russian economy is open today? And it looks like we are not the winners, but those who are outside of Russia. And I can give you two statistical data concerning the production, depending on the types of economic activity, to understand where is the processing, industry, trade, both wholesale and retail. And this is the data of 2014. Those who would be interested, I have 30 copies of this presentation. I can hand it over to you. I will not dwell on the numbers now. Here is how the industrial funds are deteriorated. Here we have three lines, but it is clearly see that we cannot move forward with such tear and wear, and we are doing things which are not possible. Another subclause, this is the state resources. So how to properly use these resources, and financial resources are now in the hands of the state. However, the state is not participating in the process of reproduction, and how to engage the state in this reproduction, and without coordination, proper coordination of this process, it's impossible to find the way out. We need to pay attention to national sovereignty and national interests. It so happens that private interests, they are moving ahead, and social interests are somewhere behind. And despite of the fact that private economy is the priority of private interests, but this is misuse of these interests. And for us, it is very important to see the future. For if we focus only on the everyday problems without seeing the horizons, it wouldn't be possible to jump to new economic formation. New properties of our industry couldn't be in such a state so that we could simply replicate some remains of the technologically advanced countries. It is necessary to understand how to be within the market to become strong. And what I wanted to underline, the market track wouldn't spare those who lag behind, and Russia. It is necessary to create new things, not just to replicate the technologies, very well-known technologies, but to create new things. And as Giuseppe Chiesa said and quoted Joras Alforov, who was the speaker at the previous session, we have a lot of new things, but we need to develop the domestic market. Without the domestic market, it's impossible to move ahead. I would like to remind you that once Russia started to develop domestic economy before 1917, this is the development of internal market. And you know the works under the titles of the development of capitalism in Russia on domestic market and others. And by developing the domestic demand, we will move forward. We have here two more tables where we describe the use of the industrial capacities. It is seen that there are many branches where 100% of these capacities are used. That's just because of the tear and wear of that equipment, and we have to fully use those industrial capacities and to arrange their upgrade. Now, let's see how much electronic equipment is produced in this country. Now, we definitely demonstrate the growth, but the share is very minor in the overall capacities. In order to switch over to new economy, we need to think about that. Thank you very much. That was a presentation of principle, and three theses have to be assessed. All nations' interest is not just a kind of abstraction. That is the matter which concerns every one of us and should be part of the industrial activity. This is a very serious alternative to traditional way of thinking. The second thing is of great importance is the formality or formal character of statistics. In many cases, this is some kind of an average temperature in the hospital, and some are sick of different diseases. Someone have plague, another flu, but in the average, the temperature will be 36.6. And the third thesis, our team, since the beginning of the 90s, talks about the necessity of the strategy of advanced development. Now Sergei Glaziev also mentions about this and supports this idea. And if one locomotive is placed on patent, you cannot invent new, but you can create a new airplane or to create something else. And with countries, and for many countries, this is a real challenge. And that's the way we have to go further. Thank you for these focuses, and we will try to bridge those gaps. And Montu Saxena, I have already introduced him. He's the doctor of physics and head of the laboratory and one of the most prominent scientists with very famous laboratories where Mr. Kapitsa and other Nobel Prize winners worked. And he is the head of the Asian Forum of Cambridge. You have got 5 minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
Sharing these thoughts with you, could I have the
Machine? Yes.
yes, the control? Excellent. Thank you, Sergey. Well, indeed, the tradition of Kapitsa is extremely powerful influence in Cambridge, particularly when we talk about science and technology, and you'll see it's evident. But here in the picture you see behind King's College Chapel where John Maynard Keynes worked, and his name has already been mentioned. And how do I move this? This one? The green one, yeah? It's not, now it is working, okay. Okay, and here we see the courtyard of Trinity College where Peter Kapitsa used to work. But this is the past, what's happening now. I would like to discuss a couple of other points with you. One thing I like to always highlight, and this is not an advertisement, but a form of thinking about things, that Cambridge has produced 91 Nobel Prizes. It doesn't really matter. This is an important thing, but it's a kind of an achievement. But at the same time, its ecosystem of science, technology, innovation, education, a way of organizing the society has produced also $6.5 billion of high-tech production on the other hand. So these two things go hand in hand. So let's try to understand this process. We look at here something what is called as Cambridge phenomena, which runs counter to what is logically believed today where the production in society should be heading. Look at 1960s. We had the consultancy wave in Cambridge in 1960s. This seems to be where most neoliberal model pushes economies to do today. We have now, if you look at 1991 and 99, large companies are moving to Cambridge to buy its knowledge, buy its technologies. And further on, we have our own production of companies, which are rather companies which produce anything from materials, high-tech services, information technologies, and so on. So this trend is something very important to follow. This is not as believed everywhere, including in Russia, including here in Russia, that we should move in the other direction to have an economy. Now, production is where we are heading to, and we have arrived. It's a message I'd like to highlight. To understand this thing, I like to be a little bit provocative, perhaps even be a little bit insulting. That, and the main thing I want you to look at is the middle point there. The phenomena has also proved for us to understand that economic understanding of production is limited to post facto analysis coming from a particular kind of data. And economics alone does not have tools either to understand production, how it originates. So in a way, what I'm saying is that economic tools to engage with this are like those of a jeweler. They're sophisticated, but they're delicate. You can't ask a jeweler to dig a mine. And that's what often economists are forced to do, and that is something we need to keep in mind, that that's not the right kind of tools we're using to understand it. But I make a further assertion that production is rooted in need, not in the demand. And in this way, what I mean is that how need is correlated to how the society is organized. And this organization generates values which governs the need. So this is a convoluted way of saying that a lot of things we have, iPhones, the kind of clothes we wear, the transport modes we use, are they something that we need, or are they generated because of a particular social system we live in? How do we actually think about that is an important point that we should not forget. And one way to understand that are these basic principles. If one doesn't understand this basic principle, we are missing really the boat here. Science, the first step in this process is that how science, and perhaps culture and music, which are deeply connected and related to the society, just as examples, are the grasping principles of nature. Engineering, where we systemize and understand how the processes are controlled, leading to application of science. And finally, the last step, the final step, is where technology and innovation, making engineering useful for public good or commercial gain, comes in. One can make different choices. So understanding this is very important. This will be highlighted tomorrow again, and by talk by Chokan Daumelin, which I encourage you to attend. But moving forward, this formula is extremely important. And the point that most planning, economic planning, tends to go to the last step without realizing the first two steps. That you should keep in mind very clearly. I can't seem to move forward with slides easily. So to highlight this point further very quickly, I would like to say, for example, let's take, if the market-driven way of moving forward was so excellent, then how come today we do not have a cure for cancer? It's something at which there is a huge demand, perhaps the biggest demand of all demands. Money is thrown at it, but we have no answer. Similar things are possible to think about in terms of how alternative energy solutions. In fact, the state market way of thinking distorts the debate. As we start talking about should we have unlimited sustainable supply of energy, well, we don't talk about how we consume energy. That's the more important part. Otherwise, we will not find solutions to this. So I shift very quickly to the last couple of minutes that I believe Eurasia, which is what I put here as a map, we often forget. We think of it as a very far away place. Just look at the green belt, which for centuries has always been connected between Asia and Europe. And however, the common term that is used often confuses us because Eurasia is an amazing nexus of time and place and production. How? Here are some points. When we use the word Silk Road often to describe Eurasia, we make a couple of mistakes. We try to think of what Eurasia as a place through which things pass through, but not produce, which is not true. Science, culture, as well as goods and services have been produced here for a very long time and often not really recognized. This is not a place from where things just pass through. They are produced here. It has an important political implication. That's why these countries are driven to become resource, commodity-based economies, so things can just simply pass through, not produced. Now, the proposal. Production goals in this area, here is a proposal for you. There's a new area of quantum technologies, which is well developed here in Russia. And I want to highlight the new era of electronics, refrigeration, energy storage underpin all other areas of technologies. We often fall for smaller things, 3D printing, which is important, or IT technologies, but they are, again, in the last stage. We need to take control if you want to be in the right place for the supply chain. And this comes from understanding of supply and value chain from a scientific and technical perspective, not purely economic perspective. So this is to slightly baffle you, but here are the things which can be done. Here's a sort of a small menu. Refrigeration, extremely important things. From cooling this room to cooling your food, cooling your telephone. I will finish in 30 seconds. And superconductivity. These are the areas in which Russia can excel with partnerships. And it's a unique value proposition here is that because risk has been taken somewhere else, but production needs to go forward. This is a place where this can happen. Because the classical technologies is where the world is embedded in. It will be stupid to reproduce them here in Russia. And last slide, final point, that while Russia reindustrializes, it should not fall for easy options. Easy options being that we keep trying to find that there is a silver bullet out there which will solve everything. We want to copy Japan. We want to copy Korea, China, and other places, America. But they started a different place. They started an industrialization process. Russia is reindustrializing. Think of your unique advantages that you already have, where they can take you. Here you can select particular things, which I have highlighted already, era of electronics, electronics beyond silicon, non-silicon electronics, for example. And so, by which I mean new industrial sectors and sub-areas, which is what are important. And we really need to focus on that last point. A downstream potential of oil industry, mining industry, and agro-resources. Not just selling the commodities, but how do you create jobs and new industrial sectors. And that's where we come from, and that's the proposal, and I'll finish there.
Thank you. Огромное спасибо, Montu.
Thank you, Montu. Dear friends, it's a model which gives us a chance to look at the future through a different perspective. And when our colleagues from Cambridge, from Italy, from other countries say Russia can be one of the agents, of the actors of the Eurasian new process where unique opportunities will be harnessed to go at a higher speed rather than resurrecting or repeating what the West has already done. We are really happy to hear it. Everyone is tired. Let me tell you a joke. When Mr. Khrushchev came to collective forum, he asked, shall we get up and overtake America? A peasant told him, We will overtake him, but it will be shameful for us. You know, it will be not good to run ahead of America when your trousers are not torn in pieces. So it's a joke, of course, but with all the contradictions and experience of the Soviet Union, if we take away 25 over the last 25 years, well, if we remove the war, we created the best education, which made it possible for Gagarin to be the first man to go in space. We created great inroads in the fundamental science and culture. So such opportunities, such deeds were performed by other, countries as well. And this is a result of the integration of science, technology, and culture in a variety of, environment, not only business corporation. Cambridge is a very interesting experience where 1,000 long history combines or serves as a platform for a, thrust forward, where in Pablo Eagle they open a genome of human genome, and in other areas of the physicists, which I cannot speak of because I don't understand. Such opportunities are open for our country, and I really am thankful to Lane and for Montu for encouraging us. But we have no less interesting Russian speakers. Viktor Tizanov will wait, and I will give the floor to Oleg Smolin at the moment. I have already presented him first deputy committee of the State Duma for Education. The chairman of committee has changed, and Smolin has stayed there since 1990. And he is a very big, prominent scientist, academician of the Russian Academy of Education, and I am happy to have been his friend for many years. And thank you, Oleg, for coming here. Okay. Oh, I can use this microphone. Thank you. Good. Good afternoon, colleagues. May I welcome you all here, participants of the Moscow International Economic Forum, and to wish all of us, as my Ukrainian grandmother would say, let the God allow our calf to eat the wolf. Well, some speakers spoke about the limits for growth, though some of the authors of the first report on the limits of growth, Demis Meadows, in his book, beginning that we are approaching to the global catastrophe faster than they predicted in the beginning of 70s. Nevertheless, the Roman Club issued another, report, review, which is not limits to education. And the point of my presentation is that there are no limits unless we follow the principle of Guberman. Well, about orientation. The subject matter of my presentation is education and cadres for high-tech economy. And I will start by saying that now we're going through the crisis of personnel, of cadre, despite we have the world leaders in terms of the formal, leaders, people with the university degrees, but the more people we have with the degrees, does not mean that we do not have the same amount of educated people. So we are in a situation of professional crisis of professionalism and moral and ethical crisis as well. You know, 1/3 of the population believes that the sun is a satellite of the Earth, and some people believe that if radioactive milk is boiled, the radioactivity will dissipate, and this happens in the country with more than 57% of formally educated people. And when a trainer of the Faculty of Journalism of the Moscow State University says that 50% of her students do not know which sea Volga flows into, and such examples can be listed for a long time. Such examples are abundant. You all know that to find a real professional even in such areas. Jurisprudence is not an easy, though the number of lawyers is great. I will allow myself to dwell on 3 issues in this respect, but I would like to remind you that a group of the deputies of the State Duma, among them 4 professors, Zyuganov, Alferov, and myself, presented to the lawyers a new draft law on education for everyone. Well, of course, we understand that, we prepared that, our colleagues supported that, and we appreciate it. It contains a diametrically, principally different model of the education policy. For a long time, we have been championing the new cause. The first issue, we'll list 3 issues. In order to prepare cadres for new economy, what approach should we exercise in the field of education? Formalized, formal pedagogy, or creative pedagogy? Our answers is clear. We share the opinion that students is a torch which should be, ignited rather than the vessel which should be filled. But of course, we understand that if the vessel is empty, then the torch will not become ignited. So certain level of prepared level is necessary. But look, what they have been telling us all the time, they say we should remove from the education the human factor. This is the ideology of universal examination. Several years ago, they told us that this countrywide examination is epitome of perfection. I recall my discussion with a famous pedagogue in Moscow. I did not call him by name. Several years ago, he said that do not take EEG. People had just grown accustomed to EEG, but I told him the person can become accustomed to everything else. So accustomed to the worst situation does not mean that it is necessary this evil should be retained. And even the founders of EGE examination now call for their changes. So for in our draft law, we propose the softest form, voluntary choice. We respect in terms of human science or verbal examination, because to speak, think, we should teach our children how to think. Second issue, replacement of the quantity with quality. We understand that the quality of education has fallen out. What government proposes to us? They propose to us a federal target program for development of education, saying that within 5 years we should close down 40% of Russian universities and 50% of their branches. And while doing so, they're not doing because the level of education is low or high. I know a branch of the private university, which is science metrology, has higher grades than some federal university. It's a typical case, but the branch should be closed. That's what people in the government say. I think this is a replacement of the target. There is no proof that the larger the institute or university, the better students fare there. I told him that in foreign countries, the majority of the elite universities are not the largest universities. They're mid-size. Definitely, you are supposed to have a certain quantity to go for better quality, but it does not necessarily mean that the higher number of students, the better they will fare, the better grades they will receive. On the contrary, if it happens in an obligatory way, within the first 2 years nobody works properly. Everyone tries to figure out who is the boss of whose. They tell us that we have too many students. We enroll as many students into universities as in the United States attempt to get enrolled. But what happens then? And then we see that if in the leading universities of the West, half of the students do not cope with the curriculum, if you enroll 10, students free, you cannot expel more than one student. I think it's a pseudo barriers, but I think we should say create barriers through the course of the education. You have one maximum, 1 minute. So, dear colleagues, I will not be able to speak about the values and morals. I will only conclude by saying that the draft law on the education will be published on various sites, and we will invite you to see the comparison and to understand what provisions of what law you would support. And to remind you, in conclusion, you of course know the formula of Kant. I cannot. I am not. Well, so the laser technology teacher comes and they say a joke on the. She says that it's a joke. It's a play of words. I wish you every success with our students would have the moral law and study in their place. Thank you very much indeed. It's a very important presentation. I invite you all to treat it very carefully and seriously, because our forum, as the St. Petersburg Congress and the event which is taking place within the framework of the Congress of the Educationalists and Culture Workers, aim to change the situation. Strong resolutions adopted there, read. However, the something movement is noticeable, and certain discussions in the sphere of education allowed us not to perform the total privatization of schools, and half of the education in our country is still free of charge. Oleg Smolin will support me in saying that it was a very big battle. Today we see some positive trends, and a lot will depend on us if we are not lazy, if we go ahead and support the draft law and put it into law. That will mean a lot in the future of our children. Wars are won by teachers, so we should think about teachers who will create those who will defend our countries, as the graduates of the school defended us in the Second World War, and I would not like to believe that it's not likely to happen anymore. Now, as again, we'll structure a bridge from English-speaking speakers to our Russian-speaking colleagues, but we have arranged a group of interesting, speakers. After we have done with this team of panel now, Sorokin, Kolganov, Tolkachev, Kleiner will then take those the chairs. But now I would like to give the floor to our colleagues from the United Kingdom, Bernadette Mill, a deputy of the Regional Parliament of London. Bernadette, 8 minutes at your disposal. Go ahead and present your ideas.
Пожалуйста, презентацию, Бернадетт. У нас что-то с оборудованием. Вообще экраны погасли. Караул устал? Алло. Бернадетт, я прошу прощения, но, возможно, вам придется работать без... I'm sorry, I'm afraid that you have to work without... It's appeared.
It's a miracle.
Okay. Мне надо было сказать, что все сломалось, для того, чтобы все включилось. Коллеги, ну вот так происходит на этом свете.
This is the way.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. I promise to be brief and keep within the time limits. So I thought I'd begin with the historical context of where we are and how we got here. So there's always been this perception that production is just for sustainability as opposed to making a profit. Now, that attitude was embedded in the community, and unfortunately, as a result of that attitude, it led to many numbers of the rural population who tend to be marginalized across the world to actually stay within the agrarian sectors as opposed to moving in to the services sector where there is more sustainable employment. So prior to 91, there was a greater focus, as I mentioned, on agrarian and sectors and the manufacturing sectors, particularly in this region of the world. Now, there is a direct correlation between countries who have a larger services sector as opposed to agrarian sectors with regards to sustained and higher levels of employment and also attracting greater levels of direct foreign investment. Now, although the agrarian sectors have their benefits and they are crucial for society, they play a second fiddle, as it were, to the services sector in actually promoting economic growth and alleviating poverty in society. Now, I thought I would speak about Joseph Schumpeter briefly. Now, he recognized the merits of capitalism, but then he also was aware of the dangers of capitalism in promoting inequalities in not just income, but in society as a whole. Now, the reason why inequality is so dangerous is because not only is it unfair, but it also leads to all sorts of societal difficulties. Now, he mentioned that progress can only occur through structural change, which is what we are all striving for, not just here in Russia, but also in Britain. And it's consistent with the effect of the J-curve, so where you have the investment or a policy change, so you don't necessarily see the immediate fruits of that. So you see sometimes negative impact before you've got to see the green shoots, as it were, the positive, sustained impact. And that's the challenge that all governments have got, is trying to achieve sustainable development, and not just sustainable development, and not just Pareto efficiency, but in some cases, Pareto improving outcomes. Now, although digital technology has improved all of our lives, it's become quite elitist in the sense that very few people from rural communities or people who do not have the advantage or the opportunity to enter tertiary education are marginalized from these opportunities for employment. And the worst of it all is that in some cases, technology has actually replaced labor. And so that, of course, has led to rising unemployment in certain societies. Not only has it led to rising unemployment, but it's also led to exploitation. So although there are many positives to economic growth, we can't just be narrow-minded in the sense that that has to be the most important focus. We also have to look at society as a whole and the rising inequality. Now, in order to address this disparity, companies must collaborate with the state to ensure that the new generation are educated to a degree that allows them to compete on the global sector, in the global arena, and also to keep up with technological advances so they're not left behind. Oh, this is the new one. So I noticed you've got the wrong presentation, but that's entirely fine. We'll just continue. So I wanted to talk more about inequality. Now, it is a danger to society, and we are, we are struggling with this at the moment. And although, yes, you'll read a lot about Britain having, among one of the wealthiest countries in the world, we still have our societal challenges. So inequalities leading to societal unrest. It's also leading to poor health, poor educational outcomes. And so this is something that we are struggling with in Britain. Now, it's important for me to say, although we come here and we want to give policy recommendations, it's also important that we learn from each other. Yes, Britain is a much older country, it's a much older democracy, but we have a lot to learn from Russia, for instance. There is this policy area called the Big Society that the current government was really trying to push, and it is struggling because, I'm trying to find the slide. There we go. So on my last point, this big society policy area is something that the previous government and the current Conservative government were really trying to promote. So about social inclusion and notions of collectivism. Now this is actually a Soviet idea. And so what I'm saying is, although it's important to develop, we can learn from each other. And yeah, that is essentially, I'm not here to lecture, but we borrow from each other. And so, although, yes, there needs to be structural change in some areas, and we need to develop the civil society, a stronger civil society in Russia, we still have things to learn from Russia. And so, I'd like to end by thanking you for your time, and hopefully we can continue the discussion tomorrow also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. Большое спасибо. Коллеги, я хочу подчеркнуть.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to underline social imparity, and economically it is not effective. It is, of course, unscrupulous and prevents the humanity from developing. Economic process, new technology, makes it possible for the human being to increase the labor productivity, should live in a harmonized society. If this man understands that, let's say, a teacher, if he's talented and shares his heart and soul with the children and gets 1,000 times less than financial speculator, it's sometimes it is dozens of thousands of times difference, and you can't attain effective education if a qualified and skilled engineer who can create new technology, if the agricultural experts who is creating, let's say, 10% more effective production of grain, having saved the labor of dozens of millions of peasants, and he is humiliated because of the social inequality. So this system isn't going to work. Sometimes they say it is important to prepare the pie, but to bake a pie, but how to share it, it doesn't matter. No, it matters, and as it dictates financial and speculative model or ability to take advantage of the natural resources, so the people who are poorly paid will never be ready to cook this pie. They will do something else. So I would like you to take special attention and pay special attention to the topic mentioned by Bernadette. And the conference is called Freedom, Solidarity, and Development. And this acronym reminds the USSR in Russian. But anyway, with this, we'll talk about this topic tomorrow. And we have one more prominent scientist of our country, one of the largest theoretician and economist, the head of the board of St. Petersburg University, Mr. Ryazanov. The floor is yours. Thank you. I want to go back to the issue which was the beginning of our discussion, the new type of production. And every epoch develops new elements, and I will single out two elements which I consider important. The first one, when we talk about the production, we can't but limit ourselves with production, because production today is education, science, and social aspect, which is combined. And I would like to underline one more circumstance which was mentioned also today, saying that in Russia we can make only single sample products. But for us, in order to be able to organize mass production, so science, production, and education should be combined. Yes, we always discuss certain things. Mr. Buzgalin, Ryazanov, and now he's criticizing professors from Cambridge. Of course, it's the most important and most interesting topic. And this is an important problem, and we have to be aware of it. And second thing is today's new quality of production in the conditions of globalization and global markets, and we have to make the right choice. And one of the ideas of reforming in the past principle, that is embedding or participation in the chain, global chain of adding value. But this ability to be embedded, it means that we will be always playing some kind of auxiliary role. But if we talk about the cooperation with the global economy and we can't solve our domestic problems, the future goal is shaping of our own chains of values and creating our own added value. And that will give us the opportunity to reach another level of cooperation with global players. And we believe we have here very promising options. One more thing which was never mentioned, and I think it's worth mentioning, privatization. Again, the idea of massive privatization is being discussed. But what exactly does it mean, privatization? This is a serious problem for economy, and I think our mission today is to reorient on the domestic demand. Although when people say about the limits and constraints, but in terms of population, we are number 6, which may trigger the process of new industrialization, which is the active use of internal factors of demand for the development of economy on a natural ground, which makes it possible to create sustainable economy, and domestic factors are more stable. And those economies where they've chosen the right balance between domestic and foreign needs, they ensure successful overcoming the crisis. And this is the issue, although we have very little time, but the situation with the sanction will be a very long period of time, and that brings us to the idea of integrity of national economy. And if we want to ensure political sovereignty and the ability to take independent decisions, we wouldn't be able to solve this problem. And I think it's worth mentioning one more element which could be discussed, that is the advanced development, which is a very good idea, especially when we compare the possibility of copying something in all the spheres in economy and technology. But even today, of the idea of advanced development, we need advanced reforms. And the first thing is to restructure our economy. And this is the need, a general need for the country, which actually is true for other countries. And as the illustration, I'd like to give you one more example and a number which proves the fact, what we observe from the viewpoint of economic growth. In order to increase the GDP in the United States for $1, you have to increase the external debt for 5 million. And external sources which support the growth, this number will even grow. This number is a little less than in Europe, but the numbers are very close. So this debt is so big that it is a visible image of the end of that kind of economy which continues to exist after crisis. And one more number which also illustrates what was the volume of speculations. It was 1.7 trillions a day. Today it is 5.5 trillions. After crisis, we see instead of fading of speculation, now it's 7 trillion a day. These are daily deals on the stock exchange. It means that the problem of restructuring and deep reforming is just needs to be resolved somehow. And the first country which could make this serious turn to coming back to real production, so the one who will be the first on that road will be the leader. And this topic is very widely discussed. And this is the way to resolve these problems. And neo-industrialization is not just the return to the old traditions. It's the beginning of industrial revolution. And financial model doesn't work for technological changes are big enough and ready for a change, but without this turn, it's impossible to resolve this issue. And I believe that is also a mission of our forum to find this approach for our identifying very correct direction of movement. I'd like to mention that Professor Ryazanov published a book where he doesn't only criticize the capitalist system of middleman companies, but also presents the solution to many difficult problems. And also a book about debt economy is also thoroughly analyzed, and alternative solutions are being offered. We finish off with the first half of our session offering a presentation of Peter Schulze. He's a good friend of ours. Peter, please, Federal Republic of Germany, the floor is yours. But Peter will have a floor, and then we'll have a rotation.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm always, I think, for the third time here, and I always like to come to Russia, and especially to Moscow and St. Petersburg, but to other cities in Russia as well. And being the last, this always gives me the chance, and sometimes as well the freedom, to discuss a little bit beside my main topic, which I want to address. First of all, I do believe that neoliberalism is withering away. Neoliberalism is not anymore the dominant ideology of capitalism, at least not in Western Europe. It never really had caught fire in such countries as Germany. So we still believe in our social responsibility of capital in a mixed economy and so forth. And since 2009, since the financial crisis resulting or coming from the United States with the breakdown of Lehman and others, and then spreading over Europe, and then finding a high point in Greece, The role of the banks and of the financial sector has really been weakened. Nowadays, we have in Germany negative credits. So basically, you are penalized if you put your money in a saving bank. And this hurts especially the banks. So here again, we have some changes in the ideology, and these kind of changes will be, according to my humble opinion, being supported and increased by changes which we do see in the real economy, in the productive economy. And this is actually the topic I want to address. We have seen since the 70s or the 80s, dramatic fundamental changes in the world economy. We have seen the reduction of the dominance of the United States. We have seen the rise of India and China. We have seen, I'm only looking here at Germany, of a relatively stable but a little bit reduced importance of the share of the German economy in the world market. With the advent of new technologies and new production cycles, these kinds of tendencies will probably come to an end or will be modified or not reversed, but they will be changed. The world which we have seen up to the 70s or the 80s, it was a world which was dominated by the OECD countries, a few European countries, the Japanese and Asian countries, plus United States. This world is over, and it will not return again. We have seen the rise of the BRICS, and we have seen the rise of threshold countries, and this means basically that we are now in a totally different game, which is driving our technology, which is driving our production cycluses, which is cutthroat competition on the world market. And this can not be done by serial, low-quality mass production of the European states. It can only be done if we fuse technology and science, education, training, and production. So we are arriving at the moment in a kind of a situation where we should develop a comprehensive figure of progress, a comprehensive image of progress for the world. It will still be the capitalist world, but it will be a change capitalist world. It will not be dominated by financial capital. For the next decades, maybe, or only one decade, I'm not a prophet, production capital and technology, as in the 70s and up to the middle of the 80s, will call the shots. And they, of course, will use venture capital, risk capital, bank capital, and so forth, but production of new technologies which are changing our lives will be in the focus. This is a picture which you have to look at, which was basically done for the 11 years in between 2000 and 2012. And you see here the reduction of the industrial share of GDP of most countries in the world, and in Europe especially. Very dramatic changes. Russia is unfortunately not in. But you see as well, there are a couple of countries which have increased their industrial share, and Germany is among them, and that has reasons. Deindustrialization of Europe, especially of the northern hemispheric states, including the northern parts of Italy, and the parts of Spain, Bologna and Barcelona and Zaragoza and others, and of course of France as well, has come to an end. The cycle or the tendency is being slowly reversed. And this is not done by the intervention of central political power. The central state, maybe apart from France or of Spain, never played a major role of reorganizing the cycle of production and of technology. It was done on the local firm of the individual enterprises in combination with pro-business orientated local and regional powers, plus universities, plus training centers, plus trade unions and civil societies. And this has created a so-called element of the enabling state. In the enabling state, the regional state is, looks at the fusion of high technology and traditional industry. It tries to create a network of participating actors from the civil society over trade unions up to regional or communal governments. And of course, in this kind of network, what our friend from Cambridge has said, the need is at the center. And social responsibility is as well at the center. Because if you produce new products, you want to sell them on the market and you want to make profits, this is very legitimate. In Germany, since 2012, a very vivid discussion developed about the so-called fourth development of the Industrial Revolution. You see here the stages. You see the stages where electricity and steam came in, and in the 70s up to the end of the 90s, the so-called digitalization of the industry came in. But what we are now experiencing is a totally new form of the fusion between technology and industry. It is basically what we call the Industry 4.0, the digitalization of production of the manufacturing century. This means what we are looking at is the so-called smart factory. A smart factory is a factory where machines are talking to each other, where machines are optimizing production, where
Peter,
machines
you are my friend, but time is finished.
I know. You can go on.
You know that you are my friend, or you know that time is finished?
Okay, just 1 second, my friend. Yeah? So this means basically that these kind of elements will, of course, change our societies and our political structures as well, as they have always done in the history of Europe or the world. You cannot have a hierarchical, centralized political structure if technology and the economy goes decentralized. So you have to adapt it. There's an old Marxian truth of the relationship between productive forces and the relationships of production. Maybe you have some time in the discussion later on to comment. Thank you very much for your patience.
Большое спасибо, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. This is a very interesting presentation, and before we do a rotation of speakers, I would like to emphasize that a number of magazines of Russia will be only too happy to publish your, say, texts, An Economic Resurrection of Russia, Modern Economy. So, colleagues, you are invited. So, those who are present here, Professor from Cambridge will not let me say truth. I very happy to invite Professor Ryazanov and Porokhovsky, foreign guests, to participate in a seminar dedicated with the issues of developing in Eurasia, which will take place on the 2nd of May in Cambridge. We have been invited. This seminar has been prepared. We'll be only too happy to see you there. And this is not the end. We have 5 more speakers with whom we will continue our discussion. Thank you, those who have been in those white chairs, but I would now request you to vacate those chairs and go to a chair, to take a seat in a chair in the parterre. I'm calling for some other speakers, Professor Sorokin, Professor Truel, Professor Kolganov, Professor Tolkachev, Professor Kleiner. You are invited to kindly take your positions here on this. We have the second half of our conference relating to the resurrection of material production in a dialogue with education and the science. Colleagues, well, I have a request. Those who impede our work by please do not speak when others make their presentation. Well, I invite you to kindly take your seats, make yourself comfortable. Where I do not see Kalkan Jean-Louis, do take, you're welcome. Mr. Sorokin and Alexander and Andrei are also here. Dear colleagues, we carry on with our program. Thank you for all those who have stayed in this conference room. We thank all of you who have retained, and I believe that I will pronounce my concluding remarks to a zero audience. But what is important is we have an internet translation, and video recording will be published on a variety of websites. So the number of the people sitting in the room is not of utmost importance. I would like to give the floor to Boris Georgy Kleiner, member of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Deputy Director of the Central Economic and Mathematical Institute. Be comfortable, sit in your room and use the microphone. Thank you, Alexander. I really appreciate for a chance to address such illustrious audience. I speak of the people and the walls and the managers. We have a 8-minute time limit. Please stick to this time limit. Dear colleagues, I would like to devote my presentation to the subject matter which was given to me by work written by Vladimir Lenin. Leo Tolstoy is the mirror of the Russian Revolution. Lenin wrote this article, but my presentation is titled Import Replacement at the Mirror of the Russian Economy. I would want to say that the subject matter of import replacement is one of the key issue. Import replacement is a word combination which you meet in the economic discourse quite often, as often as we used to see words investments at an early stage of our development, modernization, and other catch words. And we are witnesses to the fact when economists are, vying around key words, imbuing them with different, sense, and you know where these catch words come from. So now one of those catch words is the import replacement, and I would like to say that there is some logic behind this, because at the end of the day, investments or modernizations are only aspects of the activity, but import replacement, in my mind, is a reflection of the understanding of root, profound drawbacks of the Russian economy. What I'm trying to say, the economy of our country, well, in this case, in this sense, I encompass with this word both the Soviet Union economy and the Russian economy. So at the end of the 70s was declared as a unified economic complex. It was a statement of the fact in accordance with which various aspects, territorial and industry-wise and subject matter-wise and social, by that time had come to form integrity of a kind, a system of a kind. What we see now, unfortunately, the economy has ceased to be a complex, has ceased to be an uninterrupted fabric. It is fragmented territory-wise and, population-wise and in terms of the product-wise. So instead of a complex, we now have a certain archipelago, and the archipelago, it is only in one sense, it is not a unity, but economies is not, unfortunately, an integral complex anymore. And in this sense, the issue of import replacement is only a part of the larger issue of creating a standalone, economic complex. I'm not trying to say that we do not want autarky, that we need an open economy. Soviet Union was close to autarky, while Russia in the 90s were close to open economy. Now it is time to find the optimal correlations between the openness and closeness, which I would rather call as membrane economy. Membrane, as you know, is a impenetrable media. So setting up of such a membrane economy, which at the same time self-developing and self-sufficient and protected from various challenges, is the main target. When we speak about import replacement, we only isolate a small fragment of a larger issue. Since we were a civilization, along with the import replacement, we should speak about export replacement. The structure of export, one product export structure, is not to our satisfaction either. So what we're talking about, part of the import replacement, the export replacement, we should make such transformations which would bring it to an integral state. So thinking about this problem, along with other economists who professionally engage in this issue, I would like to share with you some of my thoughts. What is, in my mind, today the key barrier to import replacement? Often it is stated that the economic policy which did not pay attention to diversification or was not able to do that is the reason why the economy has ceased to be a unified, integrated economic complex. But I believe that we should not only think about in terms of economic policy, but we should rather think of a pattern which is four poles set: economic policy, economic theory, theory of management, and real economy. So these three pillars, or four pillars or four components, which should be reviewed in an integrated subject matter, because if a policy is based on wrongfully theory, then management is not in a position to implement the political tasks, and real economy at the end of the day cannot become such that the management should be directed in the right way, and everything will be really closed down, looped rather. So when I think that, and when economists say that politicians provide them wrong decisions, they perhaps should look into the mirror. There is no theory. In our theory, we do not provide the notion of the integrated economic complexes. Some people believe that this was a notion which would date back to the Brezhnev time and does not have any relevance to this day. It does, and it should be theoretically grounded and worked out, elaborated in details. And this is incompleteness of review of factors. Well, some people say that we should not be theoreticians, we should be run post haste and sell oil. No, this is not the case. Recently I've heard a statement which I think is very important and interesting. I relate to the best possible way the words of Dmitry Medvedev yesterday. General meeting of the Academy of Sciences was held, and he came to participate with a big presentation. He emphasized that recently at one of the forums, which included businessmen and politicians and even scientists, one of the businessmen had said, "You are speaking in science. We have learned how to live without science." So this is a very dangerous time, but your time is up. Please offer some optimistic alternatives. Friends, we are in the building of the Moscow State University, the citadel, the fortress of the Russian science. And one of the task of import replacement is an important task. So economic theory should play a role in implementing this task. Thank you, Georgy Borisovich. Those words are not of imperative meaning. There are certain, works made by Georgy Kleiner and some other scientists who participated in this session. Let us look at what has already been done and do not say that nothing has been done. And I think the principle of importance is the discussion of the necessity to create a complex, integrated economic complex, and let us think about not only import replacement, but of another model of the exports and imports which is needed by our country. We carry on with our discussion. It's my pleasure to present Jean-Louis Truel, Doctor of Economics from Paris. Jean-Louis is a director of one of the consulting companies, which is modeling business. I will bring you the device. Thank you. Well, he doesn't trust me. He wants to carry it himself.
Jean-Louis, you're welcome. Окей, спасибо за приглашение. Извините, я буду говорить по-английски, но очень хорошие.
Most of our foreign speakers, they speak good Russian, but they kind of shy to continue their conversation in Russian. So you could communicate in Russian during your breaks. Yeah, I understand Russian, but not very fluent in my speech.
Because the other presentation was absolutely great, and in fact, sometimes I'd like also to have a few comments on some of the points. My point is the import substitution and import substitution and vertical linkages. It relates to some of the ideas also went by our Cambridge colleagues and others, especially about the relation between the various industries, and also by Professor Schulze. So it's somewhat related to the previous presentations. My point is that import substitution is something that is not protectionism. It should be thought as a long-term, as a component of industrial policy. And there are several measures of import substitution, several actions that can be made. With my colleague, Yanina Pashenko, who's now working in France, but from the University of Cuba and from Krasnodar, we worked on a fairly complex scheme showing how complex is import substitution. So I could speak hours on that. I will just say the problem is that many cases, and especially in Russia, is translated in import substitution is embargo plus subsidies. And I think this is not really the right way to put it. Import substitution should be an action on the whole productive chain. There are links between industries, and it's been highlighted by some of the previous speakers. And there are links between various industries, and there are links between these industries and science and education and the whole economic complex. And I'll give just very briefly a mention of a case which is fairly old but was extremely successful, is the case of Japan in the 1970s. Japan, it was a country that was good in one area of electronics, which was the consumer electronics. They were poor in telecommunication, they were lagging in telecommunication, they were very much lagging in computers, they were very much lagging in semiconductors, integrated circuits that were at that time even known as the base of the new industry. And what they did, so they imported most of these products, especially in computer and semiconductors. In the, what happened is, what they did is that in the 15 years after, they were still strong in consumer electronics, but they were world leaders in computers, world leaders in most of the integrated circuits, and they had also catch up very much in telecommunication. So now Japan, from the 80s, is a world leader in electronics. It was not the case in the 70s. What is important is that it took them 15 years to do that. It was not in 1 year or in 2 years. And second thing, that they made an action at multiple levels. And they made the action at a multiple level because they based on, they had action on the production promote the action on computer industry, and they were also making that the consumer good industry were also promoting the semiconductors which it needed. So they act both on the production of semiconductors, on the research and development, and they had a very strong action so that these companies could purchase what they were missing. So there was an action of the whole chain, and there was a strong action of the state. This is a point on which I may or may not agree with Peter Schulze. I mean, at some point of time, the action of the state in some countries like Japan and some countries like France was absolutely needed because there was a need to catch up. And I think, and this is probably my point of disagreement with the Professor Schulze, is that it's still needed at some point of time. In a country like Germany, it may be done at the regional level. In other countries like France and Russia, it should be done at regional level, what we try to do in France, but it should also be done at national level. So this is an open discussion on that point. In France, at the same time, so I come back to Japan. What they did in Japan is the import substitution strategy is that they did it not only, of all this scheme of import substitution, you've got three aspects. One is reduce imports, by various measures, including embargo and tariff measures and whatever. You have the second aspect, which is to promote production, and the third aspect, which is to promote consumption. I didn't put here on the slide, but should be put, to promote, R&D and education and science. What they did in Japan is that they acted mostly on promoting local production with all aspects and consumption of local products. They did not very much use import restrictions. So it's extremely important, shows that it was a positive action. So in France, we tried to do that, and apart from in my previous life, I was part in the team of the Ministry of Industry was implementing that in the 80s, and we were very much impressed by this strategy in Japan. So there are also things we'll probably put in the paper to explain how it was done in France. It was not exactly as successful for various reasons. One of them was changes in politics, and maybe other reasons is that the industrialists maybe had a more short-term view. But there was some very big success on that point. If I come to Russia, and what about Russia? The point is that there is the action. I will take the example, Russia too, you need an action on the whole productive chain. I'll take the example of agriculture and agro-industries. In agro-industries, there's been for many years, more than 10, nearly 10 years, a trend to increase the local production in agriculture. And this trend has been strengthened by the embargo, but it was previous to embargo. And there is a slide I very often show, and I even showed some time to a presentation where Konstantin Babkin was there. He didn't that much appreciate, I think, and which was to show that the red line is the amount of subsidies to the agro-industry in the milk production. We took the example of milk production. And the blue bars are the actual production of milk. So subsidies increased and production decreased. So it means that subsidies are not enough. And even with the embargo, what happened is that it was a very sudden measure. And what happened is that it provided high profits for some people who were already on the market, and it provided lower quality. It is going to change. It's probably going to change in the short term. I had several examples where it's going to, the local production is in some cases taking advantage of that. So in order to, I've got 20 minutes, 20 seconds, sorry. The last point I'd like to say, and last example and to finish, that another example is the computer industry, high-tech, very high in R&D, and the point is that in this industry it was the reverse. I mean, there was a strong export industry, it is still strong, and there were some positive measures to promote consumption by the local production. And one aspect, which is very important, I think it's been very well quoted, is that there is a requirement for public companies and the public institution to purchase Russian software. And the substitution is not very easy, but the main substitution is to replace Microsoft software by Linux. And Linux allows to promote a national industry. So this is a very good example how it could be positive import substitution. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое. Merci beaucoup, Jean-Louis.
Thank you very much, Jean-Louis. In this polemics, we caught the basic idea that the local government, universities, small business, and other structures on the one hand, and federal government and program and serious centralized investments on the other hand. So this is the dilemma and an easy solution. With this, we continue our conversation. Mr. Tolkachev, Professor Tolkachev, is the head of one of the financial institutions at the government. Please take your time and don't be in a hurry. Just actually, I will deal without the presentation. It's difficult to explain the basic ideas in 8 minutes, of course. And in the first half of this session, there were several interesting presentations and great ideas were exposed. I'm sure you are of the same caliber. As we remember, Mr. Chiesa, in his presentation, said the most serious crisis of capitalism is coming to this country. And I would agree with him with this and even to develop this idea. The point is that the global crisis is linked with the existing system of accumulation of capital based on specific technological background, on the technological basis, has expired. And not only technologies, which we consider and some would call the technologies of the fifth technological formation. And Mr. Chiesa said that basically the use of these technologies in IT sphere never led to the efficiency of IT. That was, let's say, a bubble. And the crisis which we have is not only exactly technological, but at the same time it is managerial and production crisis, which is exposed in the system of the global separation or division of labor, of technological change spread all over the world, ceased to be effective. Fairly recently, and even now, the management specialists or strategic management, they explain nicely that the essence of increase of efficiency of a large enterprise, a transnational corporation, is to maintain under its control those spheres with the most share of added value, which is not exactly the production, but to move dirty and low technology plants somewhere abroad, let's say to China or other countries. But at present, as was also mentioned in Chiesa's presentation, we see a reverse tendency. The developed countries and United States, they have a 5-year period of re-industrialization. The rhythm is not as high as we had in the 30s in our country, but in the United States, they're changing the model of thinking. The theory of post-industrial society, which envisaged prosperity because of the they need industrialization, that technological promotion and prosperity could not be attained if you do not have these industrial plants on your own territory. Those plants are returning to the United States, but to a very much extent, they are coming back on an entirely new technological background. We are talking about the Industry 4.0, about which Mr. Schulze told us, but the core of this strategy is new industrialization and new industrial revolution. There is a combination of those IT advances of the 90s with the new processing technologies in the sphere of industrial production, which makes it possible to create highly productive jobs and makes it possible for the Western countries to reform the global system of labor division. Instead of the habitual picture when developing countries, including Russians, find their place even in the beginning of a raw material manufacturers and the first, let's say, steel manufacturers or fertilizers manufacturers, and more developed countries stay somewhere in the middle, and the most advanced one in the end of this chain. So this global empire of labor division in the near future will be seriously reformed, because the developed countries will concentrate production facilities on their own territories, and they would reduce the number of those production change. And new technologies give new advantages. And 3 years ago, and I analyzed certain 3D technologies, I considered it as some kind of a game, a toy. But at present, the sphere of use of 3D technologies has expanded dramatically. And in 2017, in Amsterdam, there will be a first bridge across one of the canals will be based on the 3D technology with the robotized systems. A number of technological processes and chains with the 3D technology combined with the IT and communication technologies with robotized technologies would replace this global labor division chain. And the real crisis will hit everybody, including ours, that will have to look for a new place in this global industrial paradigm. And this new place would be related with the revision of the common understanding concerning the placement of productive forces. For, along with these innovations, which I already described, this production will bear the customized character. Small factories consisting out of 3D robotized printers, and you don't need big plants which will manufacture, and because of the scale, they would beat the competition. So the global competition model will also be changed. And your time is over, unfortunately, and I apologize for interruption. And this is a very important idea, which is real challenge to our country, and let's make a note of that for this change is about to take place. Mr. Sorokin, professor of economic faculty of the Moscow State University. So, well, our speakers would like to take control of their presentations. And Alexander, the floor is yours.
Well, it's great that we have a slide of my presentation. I have faced a very difficult task, and I mean that I'm supposed to give fundamental analysis of situation which we have in Russia, or ask Karl Marx what he thinks about the situation in Russia. Marx would say that such economy would not be possible. That was the kind of response that Marx would have given to us. What I'm going to talk about, there are three items which I would like to say. We speak about neo-industrialization, re-industrialization. Why indeed we had de-industrialization? That will be a root of the question. Second item, non-viability of this economy, de-industrialized economy, and secondly, prospects of re-industrialization. I think all are unanimous that we need re-industrialization. What options, what variants of response we would give as to why we're in such a position of deindustrialization? So the first option is economics, method of second method is the method of Marx. What does immediate observation gives us? Those resource curves. This is the Holland Dutch disease, and why Sachs and Orner identified negative dependence of GDP, and our scientists who work on, you apply this exoteric method, also are one with that abundance of resources negatively affect development, rate of development. But indeed, this is not absolutely exactly so. This resource curse is an absurd notion, and indeed that this is true of immediate observation. But it is possible to prove this statement if a country suffers from the abundance of resources, give away some of those resources to others, give away territories with oil and gas to other countries. But of course, it's not a viable solution. What is the reason of the situation which we find ourselves in? We all know that there are industrial relations, and they are an objective phenomenon, as well as laws of the capitalist economy, market economy exist. They objectify. Quite often my students ask them to give fundamental analysis of the current situation. Indeed, the real reason for deindustrialization was something else. This is a difference of the norms of profit. Indeed, in the extracting, say, industry enjoys the highest rate of profit, because yes, it's true, because in that industry the organic structure of capital is the lowest. And this picture, this table, I would like to invite your attention to, while not overburdening you with that, but still look at that for a second. You see three branches of economy, and the third is extracting industry. 40% is the norm of margin of profit in the extracting industry, and percent is the high-tech industries. So this is where the margin of profit in various industries are different. I do not want to quote Russian numbers. You know very well that the margin of profitability are different from those. This is something which I referred to. It was announced by as an opinion of the Marx about Russian economy. Such economy should not exist as a system of a capital without this destruction of the capitalist production. I would not even, should not even take the pain of explaining why, but nevertheless, let me spend a couple of minutes by say that capitals from the first industry would go into the third industry where they have the higher margin of profit. That is true. Secondly, it is also understood that it would be a disproportionate economy because the first industry would not produce enough. Obviously, that it would be the limit of the barrier of scientific and technological development. Why so? Because if the first industry needs money for new developments, but they do not have money, they have only 10% as a margin of profit. And the third industry having 40% as a margin of profit would not even be interested in, say, going for scientific research. But if we include into this model the central bank, then we will see what will be the interest rate of this bank at the level of 40%, and allow us will not be in a position to borrow from the bank. So there are numerous issues which such situation leads to, and you know that there is only one way out. This is a transition to manual, say, steering, because all by itself this economy cannot function. Let me tell you that the best method of manual, say, management is the planning. Very briefly, how real economy functions and how we level out the margin of profitability. It's very interesting because from the third industry, part of the value goes to countries with high-tech economies. How does it happen? How the margin of profits are leveled out? Through prices. You see the right, the prices for oil should go down from 18 to 15, but the prices for iPhones and iPads should go up. This is an interesting system when we see a redistribution of the real, wealth from one country to another country. And we'll be winding up. It's not a closely, precisely scientific example, but I wanted to invite your attention to the following fact. The nature is not tolerant of void, of emptiness. You need the prices for oil went down. Well, let us see where the prices would go up. In accordance with in parallel with the reduction of the prices for oil, the redistribution profits, and the Apple profits grew basically to the same extent as the deficit losses from the drop of oil prices. So this logic explains why we should be engaged in re-industrialization. I think everything is clear by itself. We can make forecast for the prices of oil. So in accordance with the Marx theory, the oil prices should go down, and the margin of profitability should go down in this branch. So we also, of course, need science and technology. Why? The resource scarcity announces because it is not the natural form of the product that matter, but in the level of the organic structure of the capital. It is not what you produce to the oil, but you should process oil, so it should be more technological, not only oil, but gas as well, and other mineral resources. That was my mission, which I was supposed to accomplish. There is a textbook, and there is and the last thing which I would like to say, I have prepared for publication a textbook of general economy, baccalaureate, magistrate, and internship. Thank you, Alexander. We're winding. We do not want. We're going to continue our analysis, and the economy theory of Marx works to explain modern technologies. A very good statement. The manual management looks like planning, as theft looks like market exchange. I should not equal those two notions. And now, the concluding presentation will be made by Andrei Kolganov, Doctor of Economic Sciences, Professor manager of the Laboratory of Comparative Analysis of Economic Systems of Moscow State University and moderator of tomorrow's conference related to the planning. So, Andrei, you have the floor. Kindly be brief as possible. I would like to pressurize you to stick to the time limit. Is it operated? I would like to jump from the logics of my predecessor, Alexander Sorokin, and to use those. It was logics by Karl Marx, but nevertheless he articulated this logic for us. So the Russian economy is a sick economy. The diagnosis has been already made, what it is sick with, and we even refer to some medicine, re-industrialization on the basis of new technologies, based on integration with production, science, and education. But in order to apply medicine in the correct form, it is necessary to understand not only what we are sick with, but the reasons why we are sick with this malady. How does it happen that in the Russian economy we see such a non-effective economic model, which on one hand relies on the liberal philosophy of the market equilibrium, but on the other hand is based on very high barriers of redistribution of for capital inside the country, on the oligarchic and bureaucratic control on the movement of resource flows, which creates advantages for industries with low organic structure of the capital. Some people say that the current economic model has exhausted itself. I would dare not to agree. The current economic model has not exhausted itself. It continues to be effective, perform that function which it has been performing from the very moment of its inception, to provide destabilization, technical degradation, fragmentation, and the enhancement of the social polarization. That was as the subject, the reason why it was created. The purpose was to provide an opportunity to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few. But this is a model which has brought our economy to such a situation where the key function, threatens to disrupt the whole entire structure. That's why this concerns not only the intellectual, but also the ruling authorities. So the ruling class wants to take some measures to prevent those negative effects to happen, but those measures go against the logic of economic system, against the total logic of economic policy, and cannot be successful in principle. What should be done in this situation? How can we switch over? How can we go to the space of re-industrialization, conquering high technology, integration of production, education and culture, diminishing of culture, economic inequality? First of all, I think we should denounce the liberal terminology of the market equilibrium, because no country from those and which had to modernize the economy was not able to address issue on the basis of the liberal terminology of market equilibrium. They all worked for interference with the market balance to step up this process of structural restructure of the economy. They also all relied on the measures of active economic policy and resorted to planning. We will discuss that at length tomorrow, but today I would like to say that the second malady which affects our economy and which is one of the indispensable properties of this model is not only the Widler philosophy, but the liberal philosophy of free market competition covers, camouflage the situation of the non-competitive economy in Russia, but of the economy which is divided into individual spheres of influence of various bureaucratic and oligarchic clans, which prevent free movement of capital, which prevent free enterprise, and at the same time create a situation of monopsony at the labor market by bringing down the value of the labor and getting additional revenues. This is an intolerable situation, and I think that well, the philosophy of market equilibrium should be dealt with, and with such bureaucratic intervention to the market economy, it should be thought about the situation when the ideology proclaiming the quest for profit as the key economic motive for development has also exhausted itself. This is not the foundation of the modern economy. This is not the foundation for the breakthrough to the new high tech. But in what way we can combine the energy of the bulk of the population for the creation of the most effective just society will be the subject matter of our tomorrow's discussion. Andrei, thank you very much. We have presented to you a parade of ideas, and I think what Kalganov said is a point of exclamation. Well, we can say, by summing up our work, there are no errors. There are interests. The current system has been set up as, say, proceeding from the interest of the prevailing social and economic class. It is not effective, and is not effective, and the further it will be ineffective for this class, and this class starts to seek ways to preserve its positions by changing the model. I think this class is not able to address this issue, resolve this issue. The second outcome, the program of alternative social and economic development exists, and it was presented at this forum by a variety of scientists. Even those scientists who are present here published a lot of many times the strategy of advanced development, the redistribution of economic and political power in the favor of the majority of citizen population, partial redistribution of power of authorities with a view to address this issue, use of mechanisms of active economic policy and selective planning, democratization of socialization of the property when citizens control the owner and work in a position of social partnership, development of social justice in the sphere of distribution of the primary and redistribution of resources through a progressive income tax, without which there won't be any stimulus for the innovative endeavors. And on this basis, certain priorities at the beginning, which we defined at the beginning for development of human being on the basis of technologies, culture, and science and education could be partially addressed. What I have said right now is not only the proposals of bourgeois social-oriented reforms, which would enable our country to take our country from the situation of semi-feudal, semi-bureaucratic capitalism of older type into a state of advanced development as along the trajectory of the advanced capitalism of the center. Not more than that, but what I've said sounds like a revolutionary slogan, unfortunately, in our country, though it's not a revolution. So those are reforms in the precise sense of the, and it depends on us to what extent we're likely to start at least talking about that. Doing is something which politicians deals with politicians, but at this moment, I would like you to invite to our tomorrow conference on planning, how this should be done. Come to the conference, social justice, solidarity, and development, where the freedom will be connected with equality and justice. Come to the conference on education and the industry, where we explain how we will tell you how to provide for those priorities. Thank you. See you tomorrow.